I knew this was coming. There were warnings.
Hello everyone and welcome into CrushTheStreet.com. I am Kennethameduri and I want to talk today about inflation, hyperinflation, and the problems with the fiat currency system globally and here in the US. It is a problem globally. The patient is dying. The economy around the world has been overdosed on economic stimulus. We have massive amounts of low interest rate, negative interest rate effects just trickling down into the system, and it's problematic. I mean, actually, Zero Hedge put out an article. It was news that was released. $10 trillion of negative interest rate debt is now circling the global economy. This is huge news. The patient is dying. The global economic economy is dying, and we're seeing less movement forward, less economic growth for each injection that goes into the patient, and the patient is now overdosing. And I actually purchased one of those $100 trillion novelty bills, the Zimbabwe currency notes, and I overpaid for it. I mean, it was worth less than $1 for 100 trillion Zimbabwe note dollars, and I paid about $75 for it. It was a nice, clean, crisp note, uncirculated from APMEX, and I paid the premium just because I wanted it sitting on my wall so I can look at it and remind myself to purchase precious metals when it is down. And I actually did. I actually purchased last week. I made a nice purchase, and we saw metals go up. You know, after I made that purchase, that always feels good in the short run. And then, of course, I'm disappointed that it's now more expensive for me to continue to accumulate, because I do like to accumulate at low prices. Sure, it's nice to watch it go higher, but then my next purchase is at a higher price. So it all balances out, I guess, down the line. But I don't know if I've ever told the audience this, but my mom is Argentinian, and she came to America to escape the economic problems that were circulating her economy, the Argentinian economy, while she was growing up. Her parents owned a local store. It was a storefront in front of their house, and she tells me the stories of what it was like raising the prices, you know, kind of at the peak of the inflationary problems that they saw in Argentina. And it's shocking. I mean, and I guess I grew up with this very, very, I guess, distrust for governments because of the experiences my mom went through, seeing a corrupt government in action, seeing politicians steal and lie to the people and confiscate wealth, shut down bank accounts, and implement currency controls. And she tells me, I mean, in the 1980s, you know, there was 5,000% hyperinflation one of the years, and you know, just throughout her life, I mean, she just would tell me how she would just have to raise prices multiple times a day, and especially at the peak, some of those peaks, she would have to, by the time you sold something and take the money to the bank, I mean, you've lost your profits on what you just sold. And it is rather disheartening. And it's the extreme situation, of course. But I look at what is happening here in the U.S., and I just wonder how long this can go on for. Of course, countries resort to hyperinflation when they cannot borrow anymore and they cannot tax the people anymore. They kind of get into that spot where the only option is to print their way out of their debt. And unfortunately, it's not the government that gets screwed, it's the people themselves, the wealth of the people. They steal it from the people and they pay off their problems, but the people lose their purchasing power. And it is a rather horrible situation. And you know, even now with the Fed rate hike we're looking at here in June, with Janet Yellen kind of playing both sides of the fence, talking strong as if the possibility of raising interest rates is still on the table. And it's we just dealt with the worst jobs report in nearly 6 years, and we saw what that did to the markets. We saw it go down 100 points and then, crawled back up around 70. But, even one of the high-ranking Fed officials is saying that we're wrong about raising interest rates in June. And I really don't think it's going to happen. I mean, we have almost 95 million people outside of the U.S. labor force. That was up 664,000 people outside of the labor force. And that's just a problem. And Jim Rickards actually points something out that's kind of interesting, because a lot of people are saying that the markets have priced in the June rate hike already. So we're not going to see a major reaction from the markets if they raise rates. But Jim Rickards is saying, no, that's not true. The expectation for a rate hike is only 50%. So if the Fed actually raises rates, the 50 to 100% expectation is now going to have to get priced into the markets, and we would see that continued volatility hit the stock markets, the currencies, and just the ripple effect that will take place, and probably trickle into precious metals. I mean, you saw what happened just this last Friday when that jobs report came out and precious metals took off. The stock markets were down, and we saw that happen again earlier this year. And this is very different than what we saw during the commodities bear market, where we would actually get bad news. The stock markets would go up because that meant more QE, more low interest rates, and precious metals would get slammed. And there's a much different paradigm that is entering the markets as we go into 2016, into 2017, and the wealth transfer effect is going to take place, and things are changing dramatically. And all I can say is it's time to be prepared. It's time to own precious metals. It's time to work on your skills, be marketable, because let's face it, when you're working and the boss needs to lay people off, if you're the most valuable person in the building, you might be the last to go, and that could be the difference between a recession, which is your neighbor being unemployed, and a depression, which is you being unemployed. And all things, obviously the wealth that's being stolen from people through currency printing, be prepared by owning hard assets. That's something that I've been advocating for a very long time, especially now as things kind of get out of control. And let's face it, every 40 years we have a new currency system. The last one was like in 1971, and then in the 30s, and here we are
45
years later from the last currency transfer, the last major currency shift. And you know what? Something big is coming, and all I can advocate for is for people to be prepared. So with that, everyone, own precious metals, and if you need to, go ahead and purchase one of these $100 trillion Zimbabwe notes. I'm telling you, it's gonna really encourage you to purchase gold and silver, while gold is trading under $1,300 an ounce and silver is trading under $20 an ounce. There's just some sort of motivation that I get when I look at that, and then I hear the stories of my mom in her store and the corruption of the government, and we just assume that the U.S. doesn't have that. The U.S. is in some sort of genuine bubble where the people here are different and the politicians are different and above the fray. Well, I hate to say it, but people are people, and we're all susceptible to corruption and problems because the system that is in place is faulty, and government is faulty. That was why our founding fathers, said we need to keep the government at bay, limited. And with that said, own precious metals and be prepared.